Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our April 7th North Middlesex Council meeting. We'll call this meeting to order. Roll call. We have all our councilors present. Disclosure of pecuniary interest. If you have any, please email it to our clerk. Once again, we are back on Zoom. We were hoping to keep going with the hybrid, but with the new regulations that have just come out, we are back on online virtual meetings. So at that point, minutes of the previous meetings, March 17th regular meeting and the March 25th special meeting. Any questions, business arising? Seeing none, we do need someone to move the minutes. Councillor Moyer, Councillor Hemming, all in favor? Carried, thank you. We do have our first item is a deferred planning from March 3rd, 2021. And the first one is a request for zoning amendment, temporary use for 4 Alma Street, Nairn. And I believe, Stephanie, you're going to.
Thank you. So as council will recall, the zoning bylaw amendment application was presented at the March 3rd, 2021 council meeting. During the public meeting, there were concerns raised in regards to the applications on lands in close proximity from an MDS perspective as a result of the subject application. Additionally, there were concerns in regards to the attraction of coyotes and other pests into the settlement areas as a result of the existing livestock. Staff also received 3 letters from the public in support of the application and a petition in support of the application signed by many members of the public. Council made the decision to accept the proposal in principle, but defer the application until staff had the opportunity to draft a bylaw. Subsequent to the public meeting, staff expressed concerns to the applicants in regards to permitting 5 nutrient units without any additional further restrictions. In light of this, a maximum head count was proposed, as 5 nutrient units would permit, for example, hundreds of poultry, to which staff understanding was not reflected of the intended use, nor what was presented to council at the public meeting. The applicants advised that 3 nutrient units should be sufficient for their needs, but were not in favor of a head count. Subsequent to writing the planning report this evening, staff did receive a letter from the Schlegels noting that they received the bylaw and had no further comments at this point in time. So in light of council's decision to support the proposal in principle, staff recommend that the agricultural non-intensive use have a maximum of 3 nutrient units and that no new livestock housing structures requiring a building permit will be permitted. Staff also suggests that any future structures not requiring a building permit be located 74 meters or 241 feet away from the closest residential building on a separate lot, and that's according to the MDS setbacks. And a bylaw has been prepared for council's consideration. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. Questions from council? No questions from council. We do have a recommendation in front of us. Moved by Councillor Keogh. Is that right, John? Moved by Councillor Keogh, seconded by, sorry, I missed it, Councillor Hemming. Discussion? All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thanks. And item B is a request for zoning amendment, temporary use 4486 Queens Ave, Nairn. Go ahead, Stephanie.
Thank you. So similarly, as council will recall, this zoning bylaw amendment application was presented at the March 3rd, 2021 council meeting. During the public meeting, we did receive some concerns from the public, as well as some letters of support for the application. And council did make the decision again to accept the proposal in principle, but defer until a bylaw was prepared. Subsequent to the public meeting, staff again expressed concerns in regards to the 5 nutrient units, and the applicant was in favor of 3 nutrient units, as they did note that it should be sufficient for their needs. And we did receive the same letter from Beach Lagos in regards to the bylaw, and they didn't have any additional comments at this time. So in light of council's decision to support the proposal in principle, staff recommended that the agricultural non-intensive use have a maximum of 3 nutrient units and that no new livestock housing structures requiring a building permit shall be permitted. And staff also suggests that any future structures that do not require a building permit also maintain the required MDS setbacks. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. Once again, council, any questions from council? No questions? We have a recommendation in front of us. Councillor Keogh, moved by Councillor Keogh, seconded by Councillor McClinchy. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Our clerk, Jackie, did you have something you want to say on this here, please?
Thank you, Your Worship. So just as a point of process for the benefit of the applicants or any member of the public that may be interested in the decision, that a written request shall come to the clerk's office requesting that decision. There is a 20-day appeal period that will come into effect on the date is based on when I mail out the notice of decision, which should be in the next couple days. Once that appeal period has lapsed, providing there's no appeal, the decision and the bylaw will then come into full force and effect. And I will send something out to the applicants to that effect as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Jackie. Okay, at this time, we're going to move into public meeting with our planning. And we are going to take a short break, I believe, to get everyone to come on screen. Is that right? Okay, we're going to just take a short break. Okay, looks like we're ready to start with our first planning application. Thank you for the wait. The first application is the notice of OPA and ZBA for 26428 Fletcher Road. Stephanie, if you'd like to start.
Thank you. Could I please have the ability to share my screen? Thank you. So the purpose and effect of the application for an official plan amendment is to change the designation of the lands from the agricultural area to the agricultural special policy area designation in order to permit a granny flat or garden suite on the subject lands for a period of time not to exceed 20 years in accordance with section 39(1) of the Planning Act. Whereas the North Middlesex official plan permits granny flats or garden suites in the agricultural area designation through a temporary use zoning bylaw for a period not exceeding 3 years. The purpose and effect of the temporary use zoning bylaw amendment is to allow the establishment of a 156 square meter, or about 1,680 square foot granny flat or garden suite in the form of a one-story modular home with site-specific zoning standards on an agricultural parcel of land for a period of 20 years for the purpose of housing aging parents on the same property as their child resides on. The subject lands are located at the northeast corner of the intersection of Petty Street and Fletcher Road and is considered to be an existing lot of record and has an area of approximately 1 hectare or 2.45 acres. The lands contain a single detached dwelling and a detached garage and are serviced by municipal water and a private septic system. They additionally also have access off of Petty Street and Fletcher Road. The subject lands are located in the agricultural area land use designation of the North Middlesex official plan and are zoned general agricultural A1 within the municipality zoning bylaw. A portion of the lands are identified as containing hazard lands as per Schedule A of the North Middlesex official plan and woodlands as per Schedule C of the North Middlesex official plan. The applicant advised that due to the irregular lot configuration, the location of the significant woodlands, the location of the Rose municipal drain, and the location of the current septic system, which is located, if you can see my cursor, it's kind of in this corner here at the front of the house. There were very limited options to place the proposed structure. And as a result, the structure is proposed to be located in the front yard of the subject lands, closer to the road than the existing dwelling, with a front yard setback of 10 meters off of Fletcher Road. And the approximate location can be seen on the screen in front of you. The provincial policy statement, the county official plan, and the North Middlesex official plan all encourage mixed forms of housing in order to accommodate a wide range of people, such as granny flats to accommodate senior citizens. The North Middlesex official plan further sets out the regulations required in order to facilitate a granny flat, including limiting the amount of granny flats to 1 per property. And it also requires that the building be accessory to the main use of the property. Staff are satisfied that the existing granny flat is accessory in nature, as it is subordinate in ground floor area in comparison to the main dwelling. And there is only 1 proposed to be located on this site. The North Middlesex official plan requires that the development of granny flat take into consideration the exterior design of any proposed unit in terms of height, massing, scale, and layout, and the placement of the unit shall also have a minimal effect on light, view, and privacy for adjacent yards. Staff are of the opinion that the proposed concept provided for the dwelling unit is appropriate in terms of scale and do not anticipate any negative impacts to adjacent properties as a result of the location of the granny flat. It is noted that although the North Middlesex official plan only permits temporary uses for a period not exceeding 3 years, the Planning Act allows granny flats to be established through a temporary use for a period not exceeding 20 years. and staff are therefore of the opinion that the official plan amendment to permit a granny flat for a temporary use for a period not exceeding 20 years is considered to be appropriate. Staff are of the opinion that the temporary use for the general agricultural exception zone to permit a front yard setback of 10 meters, whereas 15 meters is required, will maintain an adequate separation distance between the structure and the traveled portion of the road. It is also noted that Fletcher Road is a dead-end road containing only one other residence, which may be assumed to receive a more limited amount of traffic than other roads with higher volumes of houses on them. Staff are of the opinion that the A1 exception zone is considered to be appropriate for the subject lands. The proposed location of the granny flat has also been evaluated in regards to the MDS1 setback, and it has been determined that there are no active livestock facilities within the area that would be impacted by the establishment of the granny flat. The notice of the application was circulated in accordance to the requirements of the Planning Act, and staff did receive the following. So the Ausable Bayfield Conservation Authority states that the location of the new building does not encroach into the natural heritage feature. It is the authority's opinion that an environmental impact study is not required for the proposed development. The location does, however, encroach into the regulation limit, and it is expected that any concerns will be addressed at the time of a permit is issued. The Ausable Bayfield Conservation Authority does not oppose the approval of the requested official plan amendment and subsequent temporary use zoning bylaw amendment. The North Middlesex Building Department has no objections to the granny flat and has noted that the existing septic system will need to be upgraded to accommodate the additional unit if necessary, or a new septic system be installed for the additional unit at the time of the building permit process. The North Middlesex Public Works Department has noted that there's an existing water service connection at the residence on the subject lands, and the proposed temporary use and the creation of a granny flat will be required to be fed via the fronting water distribution system. As this is currently considered a temporary use, and due to the dual nature of the water service, the applicants will be required to install a meter pit at the property line to facilitate the addition of the granny suite. All costs associated with the works will be at the owner's expense. No other comments or concerns have been received from the public at the time of writing this report. And so it is recommended that the official plan amendment be adopted and forwarded to the County of Middlesex for consideration for approval, and that the zoning bylaw amendment be granted. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. I should have added in the beginning that the owners of this application are Ari, Carla, and Kyle Pennings, and the agent from Monteith Brown Planning is Dan Smith. I would ask at this time, is there any remarks from the applicant? I believe Dan Smith is on the. Mr. Smith, do you have any comments on this?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council, and thanks for the opportunity to speak tonight. We are acting on behalf of the owners, the Pennings, on this application, and we have undertaken a thorough review of the planning documents required. The Planning Act sets out the parameters under which temporary use bylaws and garden suites can be considered. We are of the opinion that the applications before council for the official plan amendment and temporary use bylaw represent good planning. We had previously submitted a planning justification report to the municipality for review, and I believe Stephanie's touched on most of the major components of that. Temporary use bylaws themselves are not a common feature in the world of zoning, but when they do arise, we believe that they are appropriate under most instances to deal with this particularly with this type of situation where the owners are looking for some alternatives out there. And this would provide them with the long-term assurances that they've been seeking. We do realize that the official plan amendment before council tonight has to go another step before the county for final disposition and approval. And the owners are quite prepared to work with the municipality to ensure that all the servicing requirements and everything else related at the building permit stage are satisfied. So thanks again for your consideration with this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. I don't believe we have any public for comments on this application. So council, questions from council at this time? Deputy Mayor Cornelison.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Stephanie, I have a couple of questions, actually. First of all, thank you for a report. I thought it was very thorough and very well written. My question for you is the granny suite, if you will, and I think it's a really great idea, and I think it's high time that some of these things started happening. When a house has been severed off of an adjoining farm to an existing farm family, if you will, farm operation, if you will, can this granny suite be established on an adjacent property that's owned by the same owner once the house has been severed off?
Through the mayor to the council, understand that correctly, you're referring to generally a surplus farm dwelling severance. The granny.
Okay, but my question was, if a landowner had bought another farm, right, and at the time severed the house off, and then later on determined that they could use a granny suite for their aging parents, would they be allowed to put up a temporary use dwelling on that property? Because normally we put in that nothing else can be built on there once the house has been severed off. Would that be permitted?
I don't believe so. It's still, the intent is not to have any residential buildings on the remnant farm parcel through a surplus farm dwelling severance, but they could put it on the severed house, for example, which is all in the agricultural designation.
Okay. My other question is for you, in this particular situation, this application, when we talked about services, would this particular granny suite need to have its own septic system, or can it connect to the existing septic system?
Through the mayor to the councillor, we've provided some flexibility in that. So if the applicant can demonstrate that the current septic system is large enough or is willing to be updated to have some additional capacity, then they have the option to do that. There is limited size on that property. So as the agent pointed out, we will definitely work on that through the building permit process, but it does have to be connected to a septic system. That's correct.
Thank you. My final question for you, and then I'll relinquish to my fellow colleagues on council. This is a proposal for a 20-year period of time. Should the people residing in the granny suite extend beyond 20 years, would they then have to submit another application, or is it arbitrary that this home would then have to be removed?
Through the mayor to the councillor, similar to any temporary use application, the applicants do have the right to renew for an additional, I believe it's 3 years under the Planning Act for this type of use.
So that, and actually, I just thought of another question as you were speaking, and that is that if the proposed occupants were to meet their demise prior to the 20 years, would the building then, the structure then have to be removed, or could it be occupied by someone else up to the 20 years?
Through the mayor to the councillor, we don't have anything to the effect that it would cease to exist should the current tenants no longer be living in there. But certainly, I believe the agent and the applicants have indicated that they fully understand and anticipate to remove that structure should that occur, from my understanding, and perhaps the agent can speak to that a bit more.
Thank you.
Mr. Smith, would you like to speak on that?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, in response to the councillor's inquiry there, yes, we agree with what Stephanie just indicated, that that's always been the understanding. And in fact, with our previous experiences with this type of accommodation, there's always been that understanding that if at any time the granny flat ceases to be occupied by the intended occupants, that the dwelling would be removed from the site.
Okay, thank you both very much.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? No other questions? We do have a recommendation in front of us. Councillor Keogh, seconded by the Deputy Mayor Ellison. All in favor? Carried. Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Smith.
Thank you.
And we have our next application is 620. I see it's after that. And that is a notice of zoning bylaw amendment, temporary use renewal for 2242 Elm Tree Drive. And that's Kevlin Farms. And Stephanie, go ahead.
Thank you. So the purpose of the application is to renew a temporary zoning bylaw amendment, which was granted by council in 2018 to temporarily allow a second residential dwelling on an agricultural parcel of land for the purpose of boarding seasonal farm laborers. More specifically, the applicant is proposing to keep an approximately 83.24 square meter or 896 square foot mobile trailer on an agricultural parcel of land in order to continue to house the 2 seasonal farm laborers. And the applicants have advised that the seasonal farm laborers would continue to assist with the livestock operations on their farm. The mobile home is located on an unused corner of the agricultural parcel of land, which you can see up on your screen. The provincial policy statement, the North Middlesex official plan, and the zoning bylaw all permit secondary residential dwellings for the purpose of boarding seasonal farm laborers through the process of a temporary use bylaw. The North Middlesex official plan and zoning bylaw state that a second farm residence may be permitted, provided the second farm residence is on the same lot and is accessory to the main farm operation. The second farm residence shall be a temporary residential unit and shall be permitted by way, again, of temporary use zoning bylaw. And the notice has been circulated in accordance to the requirements of the Planning Act, and we did receive the following comments. So the North Middlesex Chief Building Official advised no objection to the proposal, and no other comments or concerns have been received from the public or circulated agencies regarding the proposal. So it is recommended that the application be approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. I believe we have Kevin, Kevin Boer with us. And Kevin, is you have something you'd like to add to that?
No, everything sounded good. I have nothing to add.
Okay, thanks, Kevin. We have no public on this as well. There's no public to speak. So council, questions on this? Any questions from council? Seeing, Deputy Mayor Ellison.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Stephanie, we had a discussion earlier with other applications, particularly around seasonal workers and all the regulations that are required to meet their accommodations. And I know that you and I had a discussion on that about how some of the planning policies or requirements from the provincial government may be modified to expedite the ability for the seasonal laborers to come in, given during this pandemic. Has there been any update on that at all?
Through the mayor to the councillor, from my understanding, in speaking with the Middlesex London Health Unit and a different meeting, they are close to having a different updated policies, but nothing yet from my understanding.
Well, that's pretty quick. That's pretty quick, given it's only been 6 or 7 months. That's actually not bad. Good, thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions from council? No other questions from council. We have a recommendation in front of us. Moved by Councillor Nicol, seconded by Councillor Hemming. In favor? Carried. Jackie, there's an appeal period on this, 20 days, correct?
Yes, so I will be sending out notice of decisions with the appeal date on it. And providing that there is no appeals, the bylaw would then come in force and effect, and I would follow up with another email just to reiterate that.
Okay, thank you. We need a motion to go into Committee of Adjustment. Councillor McClinchy, Councillor Keel, all in favor? Carried. All right, we're at 6:30. Yeah, we're okay there. So this is a notice of consent to sever land for 34456 McGuire Road. And the owners are Carl and Marion Robinson. Once again, Stephanie.
Thank you. The purpose and effect of the application for consent to sever is to sever surplus farm residence with a lot of frontage of approximately 64 meters or 209 feet along McGuire Road and an area of approximately 0.43 hectares or 1.06 acres from a farm parcel with a total area of approximately 19.8 acres or 48.92, sorry, that was hectares, 48.92 acres. The lands proposed to be retained contain agricultural land and crop production and are otherwise unserviced as they are used for agricultural purposes. The lands proposed to be severed contain an existing single detached dwelling that is serviced by municipal water connection and a private septic system and contains 2 existing accesses off McGuire Road. The provincial policy statement, the county official plan, and the municipality's official plan generally permit lot creation in agricultural areas to dispose of a dwelling surplus to a farming operation as a result of farm consolidation, subject to evaluation criteria. Staff are satisfied that the evaluation criteria within the official plan is being met. The size is considered to be appropriate. However, recommend that the rear lot line be relocated at the existing fence line and the area be recalculated accordingly. I think I can flip between my PDF screens here, so bear with me. Can you see that? Did my maps change on my screen?
Yes.
So what I'm referring to is the outline as proposed here. I will be recommending that the rear lot line be located at the existing fence and tree line, because generally the fences are indicative of property boundaries. As a condition of the consent application, the lands will need to be rezoned to recognize the residential use of the property, as well as to prohibit the construction of a residential dwelling on the remnant farm parcel. The notice of the application was circulated in accordance to the requirements of the Planning Act, and we did receive the following comments. The North Middlesex Chief Building Official requested that as a condition of the application, that verification of the septic system being wholly contained within the proposed severed lands be submitted to the municipality. The North Middlesex Public Works Department noted that there is a water service connected to the existing residence, and the proposed severed lands are currently fed via the North Middlesex distribution system. The retained lands have also access to the fronting distribution system, but no service has been created and will be subject to current levies and dues upon the request to hook up into the existing system and to the satisfaction of the municipality at the time that the application is made. Access to the existing property is off McGuire Road, and the entrances for both the severed and retained parcels will be required to the satisfaction of the municipality's road superintendent if applicable. But I believe here, based on this sketch, that the applicants have already demonstrated that there is an existing entrance to the remnant agricultural lands. And again, 2 access points here for the severed parcel. The retained lands are assessed to the Hill Cunningham Municipal Drain. And due to this severance, the assessment schedule for the municipal drain is required to be reassessed under the Drainage Act to the satisfaction of the drainage superintendent. And at the time of writing the subject report, no comments have been received from the public. So it is recommended that the application be granted, subject to the conditions council will have before them. I will note that in addition to the comments provided, I would be recommending that an additional comment that speaks to the rear lot line being relocated to the existing fence line, and that the area be recalculated accordingly, be added to that list. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. Do we have the applicant? I don't believe we do we? Carla Marie? Okay, so there's no public procedure to this one. So committee, questions from the committee. Councillor Moyer.
Yes, I have been talking to Mr. Robinson. The rear lot line, they do have a concern with being brought into the 68 feet rather than the 77. Mainly because where the new drain will be set in there, there'll be 10 meters, which really serves no purpose to the larger retained portion of land. With the size of the equipment they have, that would just be just wasted land. So they would like to see that incorporated into the severed residential lot.
Okay.
Stephanie, was there any, it's not too large of a lot or anything. It's I know there is a fence line there, but that can easily be removed and moved back to the 10 meters.
Through the mayor to the councillor, yes, it still remains an appropriate size with the additional 10 meters. It just, again, perhaps that fence should come down.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Any other questions from council? No other questions from council. We have a recommendation in front of us. Councillor Moy, oh, sorry, Jackie, just before we get that, Jackie.
So I just want clarification if when the council is contemplating the motion, if they're including or not including that recommended condition.
Right, thank you. Councillor Moyer.
Yes, I was going to make the motion that we accept the recommendation with the exception that the lot size of the severed lot is changed from 64 to 77. Or I'm sorry, it is the lot size is 64 by 77 rather than 64 by 68.
Okay.
So as applied for, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Okay.
I guess that would have been easier to say, right?
Okay. Seconder for that? Councillor Keogh seconded that. Discussion on that motion? No discussion? In favor of the motion? Carried? All right, thank you. Thanks, Stephanie. We have, just before we go to the next one, we do have to pass some past minutes from January 20th, 2021 for this committee to move the minutes. Deputy Mayor Ellison, Councillor Hemming, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. So it is, I believe it's 6:40, yes. And we do have a notice of minor variance application for McGuffin Hills Road, owners Mardeb Farms Limited. And we do have, I believe we have Marcel Gotts online. Stephanie, go ahead.
Thank you. So the purpose and effect of this application is to seek relief from the North Middlesex zoning bylaw in order to permit the construction of a swine barn on an agricultural parcel of land. More specifically, the applicant is seeking relief from section 6.26.2 of the zoning bylaw, which states that a new or expanding livestock facility in the general agricultural A1 zone shall comply with the minimum distance to separation formula. The lands currently comprise of an area of approximately 19.6 hectares or 48.5 acres and are vacant of any buildings or structures. The proposed swine barn would have a floor area of 2,316 square meters or 24,932 square feet, and house 2,400 feeder pigs, which is equivalent to 457 nutrient units, with liquid manure storage located underneath the slated floor of the barn. The surrounding lands are predominantly agriculture in nature, with a few single detached residential dwellings being located in an area on the subject lands. The MDS guidelines require setbacks to be calculated between the new livestock facilities and single detached residential dwellings in order to minimize the impacts of the increased number of nutrients produced by the livestock on surrounding lands. So the applicant has applied to seek relief from the following. So the required MDS setback is 588 meters or 1,930 feet. And the requested variance from the dwelling on 3443 McGuffin Hills Drive is for 446.4 meters or 1,465 feet. And the variance from 3278 McGuffin Hills Drive is for 407 meters or 1,335 feet. The applicant has advised that they wish to place the barn in this location because of the rolling nature of the remainder of the lands and the close proximity to the existing hydro line. Staff note that alternative locations of the barn on the subject property have been evaluated by the applicant. The applicant has advised that although there is a location, which generally they own the abutting lands here, so they have frontage along Elginfield as well. The applicant and staff did explore this bottom right corner here. Although it is likely to meet the MDS setbacks at that point, the applicant did advise that it would be cost prohibitive due to the need to extend the hydro line. So there is a hydro corridor along the bottom of the screen here, but there is no ground source connection from my understanding. And don't quote me on that. I'm not a hydro expert, but that's from my understanding the right terminology. So staff have evaluated the application and requirements of the foretest of a minor variance and are of the opinion that the variance is not considered minor in nature, as MDS setbacks should be met if possible in order to reduce odor conflicts by separating incompatible uses. Staff are of the opinion that the agricultural lands do not contain any environmental features, municipal drains, existing buildings, or other elements that are typically considered when evaluating an MDS reduction that would limit the opportunities for placing the proposed structure in an alternative location which may meet the separation distance. Staff are of the opinion that the variance is not considered to be appropriate of the subject lands, and it doesn't meet the intent of the zoning bylaw as MDS setback requirements are not being met and no odor mitigation has been proposed, and varying from the required setbacks means that land use compatibility issues may arise, which is not considered to be good land use planning. Notice of the application has been circulated in accordance to the requirements of the Planning Act. And at the time of writing the report, no agency comments were received. Staff did receive a letter of opposition from the applicant for the application, from a neighboring property that expressed concerns in regards to their quality of life and the enjoyment of their property as a result of the proposed variance. And no other written submissions have been received by the public at the time of writing the report. So it is recommended that the application be denied. Thank you.
Thanks, Stephanie. At this time, the applicant, comments from the applicant, Marcel?
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. Would you like to speak on this, Marcel?
Yes, the biggest reason is because of, as we had discussed with Stephanie before, the rolling nature of the farm. I cannot move the barn location back to the required distance because we would be in the bottom of the hill, and to go to the back of the farm, the added cost of installing hydro and laneway
pretty well makes it unfeasible to go ahead with the project.
Okay. Anything else, Marcel?
That's all I can think of right now. Like,
Okay. Okay, at this time, public questions. I think Mr. Gilbert's with us. Is there anything you'd like to add from your letter, Mr. Gilbert? Dave, if you're there, is there anything you'd like to add?
No, I don't think there's anything I need to add to that.
Okay, thank you. Council, questions from council. Councilor Hemming.
Yeah, thanks, through Mr. Mayor. We have had other submissions where that they've asked for relief as well. If he came up with a plan, like, is it the odor is the big issue? You know, we've had applicants come up before with berms and selective tree planting and whatnot that has allowed a minimization of the setback requirement. Has that been looked into at all by the applicant?
I don't know, maybe Marcel, could you answer that?
I have not looked into it, but if we need to plant a windbreak, you know, around the barn to cut back the odor, that wouldn't be an issue.
I would think it's just something worth looking into. Maybe it would help, maybe it would not. I realize it doesn't. It is quite an extensive stretch of the limits for the minimum distance, that's for sure. But if that would help at all, I don't know. It might be something to look into. I don't know.
Okay, just before I go to another councillor, I just want to make a comment that I believe, I mean, this is not a minor. This is 180 meters almost on the one neighbor. I mean, that is close. And I guess council has to decide that is saving money a good enough, like, you know, saving money for the cost of putting the barn up a good enough reason, because I guess I'm struggling with a little bit personally. I'm looking at it, and if I was living to the east of that, I would be selling before the barn was built almost, because it is close. But I think it's up to council to decide that, if that's a good enough reason. Other questions from council? Deputy Mayor Cornelison.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Marcel, given that you do have other properties in that area, is there not another location that this barn could be erected, like on another side road or another property that you guys own?
Most of the ground I own, the flat spots that would be an appropriate building location would all need a minor variance, because whether it's close to my brother's farm or to Lawrence McLaughlin's farm, it just seems to be, you know, just the way our location is. We only have selected spots that would be feasible to build.
And in terms of cost, for the prohibitive cost for the hydro line extension, what kind of dollar value are you talking about there?
You're looking at around $25,000 to $30,000.
More?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from council? Other questions from council? No other questions? All right, you have a recommendation in front of you. What's council's wish on this? I should say the committee's wish, not council, sorry. Deputy Mayor Cornelison.
I'll move the recommendation, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, you're moving to deny, correct? Who seconder? Councillor Moyer. Discussion on that? In favor? In favor? Opposed? The motion is carried. There was 2 opposed. Okay. Thank you. We need a motion to come out of, to adjourn Committee of Adjustment and go to regular meeting. Councillor Nickel, seconded Councillor Hemming. All in favor? Carried.
Have a
All
good
right,
night, everyone.
Thanks, Stephanie.
Thanks, Stephanie.
we have no delegations, so department reports. 2020 annual development charges update, and that is Tracy's.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is an annual report required under the Development Charges Act showing the opening, closing, and balances of our development charges and any interest accumulated and any spending from the development charges. There is a attachment attached to the report. Is there any questions on the development charges?
Question on this report? No questions? Need a motion to move that report? Councillor McClinchy, Councillor Moyer, all in favor? Carried. I believe, Stephanie, once again, it's yours, and it's 2020 unaudited year-end surplus reserve transfers.
Thank you, Your Worship. This report has a few recommendations. One is that the council approves the 2020 unaudited year-end surplus, operating surplus reserve per Schedule B attached to the report. That council approves any 2020 operating surplus deficit after the year-end audit is completed be transferred to or from the general working capital reserve. That $577.26 be transferred from the Santa Claus Parade Reserve to cover the 2020 expenses. And council authorized the 2020 purchase of the water wagon be funded from the vehicle equipment reserve. So these recommendations are based on the net positions of the municipal's operating departments after all budgeted transfers to reserves and reserve funds were posted. And the recommendations are based on factors such as future municipal needs and financial stability. The total amount of property tax related recommended transfers is $865,420. There's a Schedule A, which is the highlights of the year end. A Schedule B is the suggested reserve transfers, and Schedule C is the budgeted reserve and reserve fund transfers that were in the operating budget, but just showing where we transferred. The recommended transfers are so $70,420 to the tax stabilization, and that is the tax mitigation monies that we get from the province, from the Home for the Aged, and the unshared education levy that we collect on behalf of the education boards, but we don't have to submit. And $100,000 to the bridge reserve. From the general governance protective services, $235,000 to the facility reserve to help with the fire hall. From transportation, $210,000 to the bridge reserve. From Parks and Rec, $100,000 to the working reserve, and that would be kind of earmarked for the Parks and Rec master plan that's needed. From planning and development, we are recommending $90,000 between the two go to either a new reserve or the already established economic development reserve for the CIP program that's being introduced, and under municipal drain, $60,000 to the drain reserve for future municipal costs when we do drain work. Are there any questions on these suggestions or?
Questions from council? Deputy Mayor Cornelison.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Thank you for that explanation, Trace. That certainly simplified things because I can certainly understand it better now than I did when I was trying to read it. So it was very helpful for the explanation. Thank you very much. In terms of the surplus, like the $865,000, is that the surplus from our tax collection?
Yeah, that's the tax reserve or surplus, yes.
So our efforts this year in our budgeting process this year, our efforts were made to reduce that. Is that not correct?
For the 2021 budget, we went through it, yes. And 2020 was, as everybody knows, was such an odd year. Like we saved so much in education and training and conferences, and even though we weren't renting the facilities, there wasn't as much, staff involvement and as much cleaning. And so every operating department kind of was it just, with all of them, they all kind of saved a little bit, and it added up. Now, as I mentioned in my report, it's an unaudited surplus, and that's why I put in the report that when the auditors are done, as they do, they find stuff that I might have done that I shouldn't have, or we want to change things back. So that would go to the working reserve, because I didn't use the whole surplus with this report. There is still a bit sitting there that I left in case there has to be some entries made from the auditors. So.
Okay, well, that's very helpful, because I know that there will be questions asked when we look at what property people are paying for property taxes, why we have such a large surplus. So thank you very much for that information.
Thank you. Jonathan Graham?
Through your worship, just to piggyback off the treasurer's comment, the other thing we also need to consider is the stimulus coming from the province at the same time during the COVID relief that offsetted some of our projected, I'm going to say, revenue generation, or the surplus that would otherwise eat away at that. So we were having stimulus come from the province to offset dipping into the surplus for a net negative almost, but it wouldn't reflect that. It's not a high cost, but we did see, I think, almost 120 at the very least in 2020, and then 2021 we had another announcement come through.
Thank you, Jonathan. Other questions for Tracy on this report? No other questions? You have a recommendation in front of you. What's council's wish? Moved by Councillor McClinchy. Seconder, Councillor Keogh. All in favor? Carried. Thanks, Tracy.
Sorry, Your Worship,
Absolutely.
can I just ask, what is council's wish on that CIP? Would you like a new reserve set up for the CIP program, or would you like it just to go to the economic development reserve?
My own personal, before I'll send it through to council, and as I think it should go just to the economic development reserve to me, rather than set up another one.
Okay.
What's council is, but yeah, it looks like that's the wish of council.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you. C is the tender award for the West Williams Pumping Station Rehabilitation Contract award, and that is Jonathan Lampman.
Mayor, members of council, what you have in front of you is the tender results for the West Williams Pumping Station. The recommendation is that be it resolved that Selectra Inc. be awarded the West Williams Pumping Station Rehabilitation Project in the amount of $184,749.26. If there's any questions, concerns, feel free to ask. If not, you have a recommendation in front of you.
Questions from council on this? John, I would ask you, what was our estimate on this cost?
It was 170,000. So it came in $14,000 over.
But within just 14,000. Okay, so the estimate was very good. Deputy Mayor Canellis.
Thank you. John, I'm reading here where it's suspected or suggested that there's a 50 to 6% water loss non-revenue. So that means that 50 or 6% of the water going to West Williams is not billed out. Is that correct?
Yeah, compared to what we would take in and what is billed at the end, yes, it'll be in and around that range.
And how would how would we be able to determine that there's that amount of water being lost in West Williams?
So that was the driver of the project initially, was to cut in a flow meter into the plant. Other things came to light as we started looking at it, but once we cut a flow meter in, we can basically take off Park Hill from West Williams, and then we have basically everything south of the plant being fed through its own flow meter, which then we will go further and cut more flow meters in and so on and so forth. But it will sever it from Park Hill.
Okay, so currently with the numbers we're looking at here, it's pretty much a guesstimate because we really don't know. Is that correct?
Yeah, we reviewed the residents in West Williams accounts and basically said, you know, this is what you're moving, this is what you should be moving. Yeah, it's a guesstimate up to this point. Absolutely.
And one final comment, and I'd ask you this. So is it also possible that given that the water meters are currently located within a dwelling or or structure on the property, that leak could also be occurring between the road line and where the meter is located on the property.
Absolutely could, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions from council? No other questions from council? We have a recommendation in front of us. Councillor Hemming, moved by and seconded by Councillor Nickel. All in favor? Carried. Thanks. Thank you, Jonathan. Next one is the fire safety grant transfer payment agreement, and the fire chief, Greg Vandenheuvel.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through council, as you know, in 2021, the Office of the Fire Marshal announced the Gravenhurst campus of the Fire College would be closed, and that the training of the Ontario Fire Service would shift to a combination of local training, regional training centers, and online courses being offered through the Ontario Fire College. Locally, we've been using remote learning technology since March of 2020, when in-person training was shut down temporarily. On March 11th of this year, the OFM announced a fire safety grant providing funding to support meeting training needs, and it has been determined that North Middlesex is eligible to receive a grant of up to $6,100. Staff submitted a proposal to purchase tablets to be used by members to allow them participate in remote training. And laptops will be made available to members to deliver training and to take online courses that are being offered through the Fire College. What you have in front of you is a recommendation that you receive this report and direct the mayor and the clerk to execute the grant authorized agreement.
Thanks, Greg. Questions from council? Deputy Mayor Cornelison and then Councillor Moyer.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Greg, so this grant is in lieu of in-classroom training, is that correct?
I don't think it's specifically. It was a grant to support training. What we've recognized through using the online platforms over the last year is some members just don't have access to the technology to be able to participate in our online training, which, given the announcement today, looks like we'll be going back to again for the foreseeable future. So this will give those members access and ability to participate.
Well, now that you mentioned the technology, so are you suggesting that they don't have internet capacity or don't have the hardware?
It's the hardware.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Councillor Moyer.
Yes, so these, I guess first question would be, how available are laptops and all of that technology is hard to get. All right, now, and the second thing is where would this be housed, at the fire station, or where would this equipment be kept?
So you were kind of breaking up there, Councillor, but I think you were asking if we're able to get the equipment. I've been in touch with IT, yes, and they said it can be, I think they said 4 to 6 weeks to obtain it. The laptops would be used by the training captains to deliver training. So that would probably be kept with the training captains. The iPads would be loaned out to our members who don't have a laptop, a tablet, people who have been participating, watching a 5-inch screen on their phone. So that they would be rotated through the members who need them.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? No other questions from council. We have a recommendation in front of us. Moved by Councillor McClinchy, seconded by Councillor Nickel. All in favor? Carried. Thanks,
Thank
Greg.
you. Thank you.
Once again, deferred the bylaw to prohibit off-road vehicles on municipal roads. Who's taking this one? Jonathan Graham.
Through your worship, members of council, third or fourth time is a try, or a try and hopefully succeed. However, the recommendation before you is that council enact the proposed bylaw to prohibit off-road vehicles on highways, highway/roads within the municipality of North Middlesex's jurisdiction as defined by the Highway Traffic Act, and the set fine schedule be adopted as per the schedule attached. The only thing I would like to highlight in two things is, as per the direction from council on previous discussions, Section 4 exemptions has now been expanded to refine and include more details towards allowable Highway Traffic Act vehicles exemptions insofar as including farm equipment and farm vehicles, firefighting vehicles, police vehicles, ambulance vehicles, etc. So this mimics going back to the Highway Traffic Act, but as per council's direction, clear delineation to farm equipment and farm use has been tried to achieve through this reiteration. The final section I'd like to highlight before opening it up to the floor for questions is the set fines, which I believe are set at $250 per infraction. There is a component as it relates to the Highway Traffic Act that an OPP officer could lay a fine under that, but this is to complement the minimum so that we have some ground rules. Are there any questions from council?
All right, questions from council? Deputy Mayor Nelson.
Thank you. I know I seem to be taking up a lot of time, but just for clarity, Jonathan, I know we talked about this before, but for the benefit of the public who may be watching or observing this particular proceedings. So if a person has an ATV that is licensed and insured, under the Highway Traffic Act, they can then access municipal roads. Is that correct?
That is correct. As long as it meets the parameters of being insured, which set out odometer, lights, license plating, configuration, so on and so forth, they are exempt as long as they have those provisions in place.
Okay, thank you so much.
Other questions from council? Councillor Keogh and then Councillor Moyer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Jonathan, $234, that is the, or 200 and some dollars, that is the base fine minimum. Is that true?
Through your worship, if we did not act a scheduled fee as presented, and I would defer to the clerk if I'm misinterpreting this, we would be subject to an order under the Highway Traffic Act, which is no less than $400 and up to $20,000. So we took a step back to try to make it more palatable, but without a schedule, the interpretation would go to the Highway Traffic Act, which is, again, that parameter, $400 to $20,000.
Okay, so again, could you just tell me what that was? It $230 or
$250 per infraction.
$250. Okay, thank you.
Councillor Moyer.
Jonathan, again, just to clarify, so an off-road vehicle that is licensed and insured, but is not being used for farm use, is still all right to use used roads. Is that correct?
So under the Highway Traffic Act, components within municipal right-of-ways, it is a travelable vehicle under my interpretation if it's licensed and insured. Jackie, is that correct interpretation correct? I know there's been a lot of loose, I kind of saw you shaking your head there.
So could you just repeat that again, Councillor Moyer, your question?
So an off-road vehicle that is not being used for farm use, but is licensed and insured, that is okay to use municipal roads?
No, this bylaw is prohibiting any off-road vehicle unless they fall under the exemptions as specified in the bylaw. So this bylaw is prohibiting and the use of off-road vehicles as defined in the bylaw, and there is very specific descriptions of what constitutes an off-road vehicle, an off-road motorcycle, what defines that. I think what Jonathan's reiterating is the farm component of it. As long as they're licensed and they're roadworthy under the Highway Traffic Act, they would be exempt to this prohibition.
Okay, I think what Adrian was getting at was if it was a non-farm use vehicle that was licensed and insured, whether that could be used on municipal roads. So that's why I wanted to clear that up.
Mm-hmm.
So it still is only farm use vehicles that are licensed and insured.
I apologize for that confusion. Yeah, that Jackie's interpretation is correct. So the licensing component is above and beyond in certain instances. But I think what I got lost on was the recreation component of off-road vehicles, which under this act would not be allowed if it's not demonstrated through the exemptions.
Okay.
Councillor Nickel?
Yeah, so if someone gets pulled over on a municipal road and they're not supposed to be on it, would that also affect their points on their license and or insurance, or is it just a fine?
I would think that would be subjective to the OPP officer in terms of the infraction. This doesn't contravene the Highway Traffic Act. It complements, to a certain extent, the Highway Traffic Act, and the OPP officer can almost choose to go to the Highway Traffic Act where demerit points could be assigned. But that would be subject to the point and place of that somebody being pulled over.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Cornelison.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Okay, so I believe that I might not have been clear in my first question, but just to elaborate and to be more specific to Councilor Moore's question. So I live in a rural area. I'm not a farmer. I buy a side-by-side so my wife and I can go visit our neighbors. I have it licensed and insured, but I can't take it there.
Through that would be correct. You wouldn't be able to take it there because it's not demonstrated on the exemption.
And just to help me understand, the purpose of this bylaw is for what?
It's to prohibit off-road vehicles on municipal traveled roads and under our jurisdiction.
And this has been a problem?
It's a download from the province. It is a problem locally. I would surmise and assume that the OPP would more be targeting the urban areas than the rural areas in your situation, Deputy Mayor Cornelison. It is, again, it's been downloaded from the province. That's where a lot of this vaguity is coming from, because before it was just housed under the Highway Traffic Act and subjective to the OPP authority. By them downloading it to us has caused a little bit of confusion in terms of the application and who owns the authority. And that's really where we've been presented with the unknown. On the other side of this situation is there's insurance and liability concerns without enacting a bylaw to this effect. Where if an accident did occur, we would be held liable to either, was it prohibited or it wasn't prohibited.
Well, if we enact a bylaw and the vehicle is prohibited and someone is driving it anyway and they're being chased by the OPP and to try and escape, and they go off to the side of the road and have a serious rollover and become seriously injured, are you suggesting then that we would not be liable?
Well, in more often in cases in situations of lawsuits of that, the municipality would be named anyways.
Yes,
but
that's
if we don't have the bylaw in place, there's no enforcement component related to off-road vehicles and travel. So insofar that by not having one, they're allowed.
Okay. Well, I didn't understand that when I was looking through it. I understand it better now. Thank you.
Any questions from council? No other questions? We have a recommendation. Moved by Councillor McClinchy. Seconded by Councillor Nickel. Discussion on it? No more discussion. All in favor? Opposed? It is defeated. So we're going on to passing of accounts. For March 12th to 29th in the amount of $2,089,593.03. Tracy.
Thank you, Your Worship. This report is requesting approval for the payment of the bills and accounts in the amount of $2,089,593.03. Are there any questions on the accounts payable?
Questions on the account? Deputy Mayor Cornelison and then Councillor Keel.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. I think my question may be for our for Jonathan Latman, if I may. And that my question is for the consulting fee to Douglas Valley Limited in the amount of $4,257.28. Is that part of his tender bid that we awarded him?
Jonathan?
Through your worship to Deputy Mayor, I'm not on that project anymore.
Oh, sorry.
Deputy Mayor Jonathan Graham's on that project.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Go
Yeah,
ahead.
It would be included in his tender bid. I could tell you that. I could surmise that.
I don't need to explain it anymore.
It is in the tender bid?
It would be part of his tender. It would be a progress claim related to the project that he's undertaking on our behalf.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Who was it? Councillor Keogh, I believe.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Tracy or Jonathan, check number 01605 to McLean Taylor in the amount of $234,200 for the Beechwood Bridge. Are we just about at the end of dispersing checks for that, or are we taking this all up front and then apply or receive our grants from the province and federal government after that?
I'll let John answer how far along we are, but these are draws they put in monthly, and we have submitted a draw to the province to get some of our money back. But okay. Jonathan can definitely answer how far along they are. So
yeah, so they came back to the site. Obviously, what you're seeing is all the beams and girders and all the crane work, and that's what this bill is basically for. They're still planning on being done by the end of June, beginning of July. So a couple concrete pours over the next couple of weeks on the approach slabs, and then we are going to be hoarding the entire bridge and removing all the old lead-based paint from it.
Okay. Thank you.
Other questions for accounts? Seeing none, we need a motion to pay our accounts. Councillor Nickel, Councillor Moyer, all in favor? Carried. Committee reports, Lake Huron Pipeline, anything there, Councillor Hemming? Nothing there. ABCA, anything, Deputy Mayor, go ahead.
Yes, I do. Just an interesting comment, if I may, Mr. Mayor. And that is at our most recent meeting, there was a proposal submitted by the Asaba Bayfield to implement a good neighbor policy in the Port Franks area to allow spraying on Asaba Bayfield lands to control the gypsy moth. I was quickly asked if they would like to implement a good neighbor policy in Park Hill as well in Elsie Craig, particularly in Park Hill, where if they'd be interested in spraying some of the mosquitoes that they have an impact on our residents in Park Hill. And they shared with me that spraying is allowed. I'm not sure that it is, that's what they say. However, in Port Franks, they would be paying the cost of that. And in Park Hill, if it's allowed, I'm assuming that we pay. So I guess my question is, Jonathan, if you know, are we allowed to spray over the Park Hill Dam area to control them or not?
For your worship, in relation to the mosquitoes or the gypsy moth question?
Mosquitoes.
I wouldn't, I think it all really would depend on what they're spraying, and if we can get a catalog of what that list is in conformity with the ministry environment, we can certainly consider it. So they can reach out to municipal staff to kind of kick off that process if that's council's desire.
Well, I guess you didn't understand my question. My question was, like this past weekend, Zimmerman was applying the larvicide for the mosquito control in Park Hill area. When they do so, do they fly over any of the Asaba Bayfield lands and make an application of larvicide?
Yes, they do. It's over regulatory areas that the Asaba Bayfield has, authority over. But they're notified through the normal process that we have to do every year under the mosquito program.
And do they contribute any funds to control the mosquitoes on their property as they do in Port Franks?
No, they do not.
Okay, thank you.
Any questions for Adrian? Councillor Keogh.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I guess in order to complement Deputy Mayor's comment there, so this good neighbor policy, if Asaba Bayfield does not share in the cost of mosquito abatement, could perhaps they assist us with some gypsy moth application? I know it certainly is a problem along the Bear Creek Road here on the Nairn and the Nairn Creek watershed in the Bear Creek watershed as well.
Deputy Mayor Ellison.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. Yes, I did ask that question, Councillor Keogh, and I was told that what they need is they need to have an official complaint. They'll investigate the severity of the infestation and make a determination on applying any controls at that time.
Okay, thank you. We'll get the paperwork started.
Okay. We have a meeting on April 29th.
Okay.
Any other
good.
questions for Deputy Mayor? No?
No.
All right, Blue Water Recycling, anything you wanted to add to that?
No.
Doreen?
No.
Okay. Any questions for Doreen? EDAC, Councillor Moyer, nothing there? We're being slowed down on our committees again. The local school advisory?
We have a meeting next week.
Okay. The Recreation Committee? Nothing there. Water Wastewater Committee?
Nothing.
Okay, policies, next week is the meeting, correct? Is that next
2
week?
weeks. 2 weeks.
Okay. 2 weeks.
22nd, yeah.
Okay, Fire Committee?
No, I was hoping to possibly have some minutes by now. I have had an inquiry from a council member and from a ratepayer, so perhaps maybe we can have that for the next meeting.
Okay. All right, Jonathan?
Just through your worship, and an administrative update in relation to the build committee. We've refined some of the EMS components to the design for the fire hall / EMS. And once we do that, once we formalize that, we will reconvene with the build committee before we move ahead in terms of final approval for tender documents.
I was just hoping since the 23rd of February, maybe we would have had something, but okay.
But besides that, I will have staff work on the minutes so that they'll be incorporated appropriately.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. Aqua, anything there, Jonathan? No. Correspondence. Township of Warwick, notice of open house and public meeting, official plan review. Ministry of Solicitor General, 2020 compliance with the Emergency Management and Civil Protection Act. Receive and file. Parkhill Community Garden, a thank you note for the Community Development Fund allocation for 2021. So other and urgent business, other business. Councillor Hemming, go ahead, and then Councillor Moyer.
Yeah, I just like wondering if somebody could get either the sign, the speed sign that we have. I've had some complaints from people in Hungry Hollow about traffic moving very fast, not so much vehicles, but with big trucks and stuff as well, with all the construction going on. Can we get that posted out there for a while? And also too, if there's a sign missing too as well on right at Townsend line in there, but I suppose that might be county anyway. So I just wondering if we could get something or some deterrence or police visibility out there or something.
Jonathan?
Through your worship, I was actually speaking to our public works manager today or the other day about getting the speed sign remobilized. So that'll be out in the next near future. In terms of the sign on Townsend line, I'll look into that as well too.
Okay, thank you. Yep.
Okay, Councillor Moyer, I believe you had your hand up. And then
Yeah. I have a couple things here. I see Mike sitting there. I thought we better get him involved in this meeting. I'm wondering if I had two things for you, Mike. I wonder if there's any update on Tech Savvy. And then also I've had some people asking about the community improvement plan. They're hoping to do some improvements on their storefronts and wondering if there's going to be any programs out in the near future for that.
So I'll speak to through your worship to Councillor Moyer. We just finalized timing for the community improvement plan today, basically. We're having the statutory open house May 12th, and then to public meeting and adoption at May 19th, I think is the expected date. So that'll be moving forward. It'll take maybe a few weeks after that, Gord, to understand how we're going to process those applications internally.
Yep.
Sorry, what was your first question?
If there's any update on Tech Savvy.
Oh, Tech Savvy. So I do keep bothering them. There hasn't been any update. I think you see the one on Nairn and the one really close to the road. They're still working on it. The last update, I'm not sure if I did provide to you, Gord, specifically, but I think I did, is that they were moving forward with the North Middlesex projects. They were having some issues in another municipality where the wires do, or the airwaves do connect to, but they were still hoping to have it available sometime in spring. So I do see that the Nairn's just finished up, though, so I was hopeful. I see that daily, well, not daily, but when I do go into the office, I see the progress on that one. And wow, was that close to the road, that one. So
yeah. All right. Yeah, I know the one in West Gilville were one of the first ones done, so there's always lots of questions on that when that's going to be up and running. So
yeah, it's not an issue of North Middlesex, it's everybody else that they connect to at this point. So I'll try to get an update and to provide to council.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Ellison.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. First, I'd like to just share some information with council. Then I have a question for Jonathan Lappin, if I may. I want to update council on the Rural Education Task Force. As I may have discussed with some of you, the task force is moving forward with a public consultation. They are looking to host these things, pandemic permitting, in at least 2 or 3 locations throughout Middlesex County. I did offer our resources here, and I think that when the date is more confirmed, we'll check and see what's available for a community center. I also got a response from Middlesex Center, and I have not got a response from anyone else yet when I put it out to County Council. My question for Jonathan Lappin is, and we've been talking a little bit about the update to the Elsie Craig water system and the proposed line that will be replaced from the water tower going into Elsie Craig itself. And when we spoke, it was determined that it would go on the west side of Queen Street going into Elsie Craig. If that's the case, I'm sorry?
Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead, yep.
If that's the case, will all those trees along that roadside have to be removed?
So we've preliminarily said that that's the side of the road that we would put it on.
Yes.
Once we actually go through the engineering and design, which we're working on getting engineering firms in the background, that'll all be addressed. If arborists are required to take down the trees, if the trees can be taken down, they would be. If they can't, that would possibly change the side of the road that we have to put the water main on, or where within the ditch line and so on. Too early to tell as of right now, Deputy Mayor, but that is the anticipated side of the road.
Okay, thank you.
Any other business from council? I don't see any more. I do have one item because a couple of councilors asked last meeting about the Blacks Bridge. Talking with the county engineer, the end of April, at some point, we don't have the exact date yet, but the last week of April, there will be a virtual meeting, public open meeting about that, about the Blacks Bridge. That's the next step in the process. And so we don't have a firm date, but when we do, we'll certainly invite the people from the community to take part in that. And so that'll be near the end of April. I think he mentioned a couple of dates, but it was the last week of April that he was talking. So that's the next step in this is a public forum. All right, just wanted to pass that along. Is there any questions on that from anyone? No? Okay. Oh, Councillor Moyer, go ahead, Gord.
Yeah, I just think that's going to be important how we get that out to the public, how they can participate in that meeting. Whether. I don't think just putting it on our website is going to be good enough. I'd rather we're doing flyers or we'll have to get it out there somehow.
I actually was wondering if we couldn't, that might be one that we actually do send out as flyers if we have enough time to put it in the mail, but especially to that affected area, right? On the,
Yeah, well,
But
let's
that's
put
something
your
we'll-
survey. I mean, if there's something that, I mean, I'll drive around, put in people's mailboxes if need be as well, like we did with the survey that they had, so.
they had a great response to the survey. We did hear that from the engineer, that he said that might be the largest response he's had on it. So, or
well,
one of
that
the
was-
largest at least. And so, yeah, we want to make sure
Yeah.
that people are advised of what's going, the next step.
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Okay,
And then,
thanks.
so we're looking for suggestions. But I know you did you did put flyers in mailboxes for people, I know the last time, so that worked good. All right, thank you. I just wanted to pass that on, that's the next step. Any other business? All right, the deferred items are there in front of you. There's 4 points. Communication with, including county council.
Thank you, Mayor Rob. In relation to North Middlesex, we had a presentation from MPAC at our last county council meeting. And while last year was supposed to be the reevaluation date for properties in Ontario, it did not occur. They're not sure it will happen this year either. They're looking at what options they have, but it does not look promising. But there was a concern about what the assessment will reveal given the price of housing. To that end, there was a request to explore affordable housing. Well, to what extent it's available in our community or throughout the county, and what the options are for that. On another note, I know that during our last meeting, one of our meetings we had, I think it was with the medical issue. Following that, there was a virtual webinar that the county put on in lieu of the warden and the CEO coming to council for their annual visits. I was able to participate in that and watch it, and I have to share with you that I found it really informative, and I found it somewhat enhanced, primarily because each department head was made available and they provided an update as to each department's progress and what their goals and objectives are for the coming year. So in the future, if that should occur, I would encourage all of you to watch that, because I found it very, very informative. That's all. Thank you. Unless you have anything else, Mayor Rob?
No, I think you covered it, Adrian. I don't have any. Is there any questions from anyone on county issue? Oh, county? Seeing none? Sorry? Okay, seeing none, reading of the bylaws.
This evening, bylaws for consideration, the Van Massenhoven drain, we'd be looking for third and final reading. Bylaw 27 is in relation to 4 Elma Street, the temporary use bylaw. Bylaw 28 is temporary use for 4486 Queens Ave. Bylaw 31 is council remuneration and expenses for 2021, and that as per the 2021 budget. And I do note there is a typo on the one bylaw referring to 2019, and that should actually be changed to 2021. Bylaw 32 is the OPA for 26428 Fletcher Road, as well as the ZBA for the same property. Bylaw 34 is temporary use for 2242 Elm Tree Road. Bylaw 35 and 36, they're appointment bylaws for 2 new inspectors from Middlesex Center that could be looking after North Middlesex. So we've just updated the bylaws with those 2 names. Bylaw 37 is to authorize the agreement for the fire safety grant. Bylaw 38 is your confirming bylaw. Bylaw 39 is struck from the list. So we're looking for first and second reading for bylaws 27, 28, 31 to 38.
Councillor McClinchy, Councillor Nicol, all in favor? Carried.
And third and final for bylaws 5, 27, 28, 31 to 38.
Councillor Moyer, Councillor Hemming, all in favor? Carried. So we have no closed. So just adjournment. We're looking, move to adjourn. Councillor McClinchy, Councillor Keogh, all in favor? Carried. Thank you. Night, everyone.